From investing over £50 million into funding lunar exploration to joining the EU in its mission to establish a set of satellites around Earth's moon, the British government may have just kicked off another massive space race, and it looks like they're going to be relying on the private sector quite a lot. There are already over 47,000 people employed in the sector. Something tells me quite a few of them are going to be scrambling to get a piece of the pie, because £50 million is no joke. It's the kind of money that can push space exploration to a whole new level, and anyone that's currently working in the industry will want to get in on that action.
It will be a critical step towards landing people on the moon by 2025. But over the last few years, NASA and its partners have experienced a range of technical, legal, and cost-related delays.
According to the British Minister for Science, Technology and Innovation, satellite technology is going to get super important moving forward, and the UK has some considerable experience on that front thanks to Lunar Pathfinder, which is a project that'll make it a lot easier to land on the moon, mostly thanks to the positioning and navigation data that it'll provide. What's more, the UK government has laid out a 10-year plan for the industry, hoping that the investment can stimulate organic growth in the future. You see, this sector is already worth billions of dollars, and with the UK economy struggling in the aftermath of Brexit, the British government needs to do whatever it can to save the sinking ship. This might also help smooth over relations with the EU, because they've been damaged somewhat after the messy Brexit ordeal. The European Space Agency is working closely with NASA, specifically on the Artemis project, which plans to put the next humans on the moon for the first time in half a century. That's a pretty exciting project, and it makes sense that the UK wouldn't want to get left behind.
There are several key space vehicles involved in NASA's effort to get humans back on the moon.
So there's SLS, that's the kind of rocket system that starts the journey.
The collaboration could potentially make them a part of something truly historic, but this begs the question, what is the point of all this? I mean, didn't the British government have better things to do? Their economy is in shambles, and some are wondering if their priorities are in order. The thing is, this whole project might be too important to miss. The ESA's Moonlight program's gonna be the next step to colonizing the moon. You heard that right. Humanity might finally be ready to fulfill its cosmic destiny, but we're obviously not going to get straight to Mars. It's kind of far away after all, with a direct space flight to the Red Planet taking a bare minimum of 3 months, and that's if all of the conditions line up perfectly.
There will also be a separate lunar lander, designed to take astronauts from lunar orbit down to the moon's surface. That lander, designed by SpaceX, is expected to be used on a future Artemis launch currently planned for 2025.
So the ESA is focusing on the basics first, starting with setting up a constellation of satellites that are going to be orbiting the moon. These satellites will help connect astronauts on the moon with their home base on Earth, which is probably going to be important. We've all watched sci-fi movies where communication with the mainland gets cut off, and let me tell you, that kind of thing never ends well. But all of this is contingent on one particular mission going well. All eyes will be on Artemis 1, because it's going to be the first time humanity has tried to get to the moon since the 1970s. And I don't know if any of you remember, but most of the later Apollo missions didn't go very well. Apollo 13 is a great film to watch if you want to learn more about that. Basically, the dangers of lunar exploration, coupled with the collapse of the Soviet Union, led to the space race fizzling out.
Artemis 1 will serve as a pathfinding mission, laying a foundation for future trips to the moon. It will also be the first test flight of NASA's new Space Launch System Mega Rocket and the Orion crew capsule.
The world just had different priorities in the decades leading up to the 21st century, but it looks like we've come full circle, and the launch of Artemis will prove to be quite fateful to the UK's plans as well. Because you see, NASA isn't going it alone this time. They just don't have the funding, so they're working with the ESA by using the European Service Module, which will be the component that helps create a livable environment in the space shuttle, along with using solar power to provide some electricity. If the mission goes smoothly and the astronauts step out onto the lunar surface, there's another massive project that could end up getting fast-tracked. We might get to see a space station in lunar orbit pretty soon. I know we're getting pretty deep into sci-fi territory, but that's just a testament to how far humanity has come. Once the Artemis mission lands a crew on the moon, everything's going to change. Suddenly, space won't just be an empty void.
Run all the hardware, all the software through its paces and show that the rockets can fire the spacecraft out of the gravitational pull of Earth, and the spacecraft can separate and travel to the moon and get back to this planet safely.
Instead, it'll be a stepping stone to the future colonization of the solar system. This space station's going to be called the Gateway, and boy do I love the name. It just evokes the wonders of space exploration in an almost mystical way. How does all this fit into the UK's own plans? Well, they're going to play a central role in it, that's for sure. The Gateway is going to need a ton of fuel to keep functioning. That's where the UK steps in. They'll be contributing the refueling module to the space station. This kind of sounds like it'll be the single most important component in the entire megastructure. However, the Gateway's not going to get made anytime soon. But that doesn't mean we don't have a lot to look forward to as far as space exploration is concerned. You won't believe how many missions to the moon are coming up. It's almost like space agencies around the world are trying to make up for lost time, because there are about 250 of them that's already been planned.
They've faced supply chain problems, and some of these rockets NASA has not attempted to have built and launch in quite a long time.
I'm just talking about the ones planned for the next decade, mind you. If we factor in missions, that's going to take off later. We're going to be here all night. The point is, lunar exploration is going to be the next big thing. We're not just going to the moon. Rather, we're going to be studying it pretty closely, which will involve countless astronauts and probes. The Gateway will be a major hub connecting the lunar astronauts to the folks back home, and I'd imagine the satellite constellation will be a huge part of that too. All this makes it quite clear why the UK is going full steam ahead. They're the biggest financial contributor to this whole endeavor, along with Italy, so they're going to be central to the future of the European space race. And given how the ESA is working with NASA, it looks like we're finally going to get the international cooperation that we've all been waiting for, because nations can only get so far on their own.
NASA leaders have said the agency is pushing to reduce costs for Artemis and streamline operations.
Some of the contractors that are building the vehicles have said part of the cost question.
It's only through collaboration that we can truly spread out and live among the stars. But what about the here and now? Is the UK dumping £50 million just for some far-fetched future returns? Well, I have a feeling that they're actually a bit smarter than that. Lunar exploration is going to generate billions of dollars in revenue, although it's not exactly going to be cold hard cash. Rather, it'll come in the form of economic growth, which happens to be something that the UK desperately needs right about now, not to mention the countless jobs it'll create, all of which will require technical expertise. So this investment is going to bring the UK some serious returns in the short term, and as for the long term, well, we can only imagine how profitable it'll be for the UK to be so heavily involved.
Artemis now has a vision of sending astronauts back to the moon and creating sort of a sustained infrastructure.
The thought of establishing a lunar base doesn't seem all that far-fetched anymore, and the UK is just in time to hop on the bandwagon. The future is starting to look pretty bright from where I'm sitting. Someday, we might look up at the moon and realize someone up there might be staring right back at us. That's all the latest news regarding the UK Space Agency's moon exploration announcements.